Hi, I'm Annie. Contact information is in the description. Today I have a book recommendation for all the sleep lasts out there. So this is for the sleep lasts and people dealing with those issues and trying to avoid sleep last tidal waves. Last animals are difficult to see and difficult to understand. For me, the last animal is play, and I have a hard time conceptualizing what play even is or how it affects me in that play last position. So I imagine there are quite a few sleep lasts out there who are feeling the same way, trying to understand sleep, trying to understand how it's important, how it causes tidal waves, and how it can be improved to, balance you out as a human being. By the way, I'm really trying to understand and own all of the animals and functions. So if you'd like to come on this show and do an interview style video with me discussing any last animal or last function and the issues that it might cause in your life or the tidal waves, feel free to reach out and we'll get something scheduled. So I just read this book called Laziness Does Not Exist. And as I was reading it, I realized it's very much written for sleep last people. As I consume sleep with double masculine F-I-S-I sleep, my sleep is actually very developed. So for me, this book was kind of like preaching to the choir. Although it's really well written and I enjoyed it, and I think some of the issues discussed in this book apply just to all of us in general society, not necessarily exclusively sleep last. So the book contains a lot of really helpful explorations and advice for people dealing with that issue. It also discusses historical and cultural aspects of this kind of preference that we have in our culture for blast oversleep and the toxic nature of hustle culture and just all the demands and busyness that modern society puts on us. So of course you don't really have to be sleep last to be affected by this. There's just kind of a busy blasting doing hustle worship in the United States and many other modern countries these days. For myself, rest and relaxation is productive. Resting and pausing and integrating is how I get things done. And I've made choices and designed my whole life around that to support the consume and the sleep. And most of the time that serves me well. Sleep is a very practical tool for getting things done. You wouldn't think so, but you can actually get a lot done in the pausing and the resting and assimilating all the consume that's coming in all the time. I am rarely a grinder. And sure, there are moments when grinding is necessary and appropriate. But more often than not, like when I get stuck on a project, I pause and walk away and go lay in the hammock for a little while. And it might really look like laziness to other people. But there are many ways that it's actually more efficient and faster in the long run to take a pause, keep yourself well rested and rejuvenated. And that's because you don't get burned out. My pace is sustainable because although I sort of err on the side of maybe like too lazy, or I would be seen that way by people, I'm also not going to burn out. I'm not going to overextend myself. And what that means is that I'm very reliable and I'm present and all my energy is rested and gathered for the work that I do. All of my decisions about the way that I live my life and design my work-life balance just sort of like support the idea that resting is a really important part of how I accomplish things. And that's kind of difficult to own for a lot of people because I think there's such a heavy cultural bias on hustling and going and going and going and just producing all the time. Constant productivity, constant production. And it just isn't sustainable. So rest and introspection is also how I keep the ideas and the inspiration going. Solutions come from periods of rest. So like I said, if I get myself backed into a corner on a project where I'm not sure what the next move is, taking a step back is always my default. And in those periods of rest, solutions emerge. I find answers on morning walks when it looks like I'm just being really leisurely. I get answers from dreams while I'm sleeping. I get answers when I take a nice long hot bath. That's just how that machine operates for me. If I were to overextend myself and put too much on my plate, my creativity and problem solving ability would just tank. And that's mentioned in this book, that there's actually research to support that that's true. That human beings are just not meant to be on all the time. It's just not realistic to be as productive as what some people suggest. It's just not normal or natural or even a useful approach in the long run. So there's a lot of gurus out there kind of pushing this idea of maximizing your productivity, but they don't seem to really be recognizing that sleep and resting is productive because, it supports health and supports this problem-solving ability, and the rested mind is more able to operate in that zone of genius more frequently. And here's just like a little pet peeve of mine. When people are really like self-righteous and bashing about inane, lightweight TV, like TV shows and movies that are kind of stupid, kind of silly, like really bashing that. Like, you need to be studying educational content all the time. Like, all your consume needs to be, for learning and growth. And I would argue that the really stupid shit is supporting your growth because it's a moment of relaxation. Now, that doesn't mean you should, exclusively watch garbage TV all the time. But I think that a little bit here and there is a nice, healthy balance. So as a lead consume, I consume a lot. I probably read like 2 or 3 books a week. I watch a whole bunch of shows, and it's a whole range of educational stuff, lectures, courses that I'm studying. But then there's a little bit of trash because that's relaxing, and my mind is relaxing and integrating all the consume that's coming in, and it's actually really useful and purposeful for me to allow my mind to rest and enjoy in that way. So I consume info and generate ideas. That's any consume. I rest and I assimilate that information. That's sleep. Then when I'm rested and all my energy is gathered, I blast and I produce. And then finally at the very end, I share with the tribe, which is play. So I'm basically just doing my animals, but that's the order that I do it in. And I think it's fine if you've got like a whole lot of that blast energy. I wish I had more. But if you have so much and you're all in on it and going all the time, then it might not be sustainable and you might experience a sleep blast tidal wave. The book includes several real-world stories of people experiencing pretty crazy sleep blast tidal waves. So the book could be just like a good refresher of the kinds of things that can happen. So if you hear other people's stories, maybe you won't have to go there and experience those kind of tidal waves. Maybe you can balance things out a little bit more and avoid those kinds of issues. So I highly recommend it. Let me know if you've read it or if you do read it. I'd love to hear your thoughts.